You're listening to the Erris Journal podcast, and today's very special guest on the show is actor, musician, songwriter and singer Craig McLachlan. Craig is best known for playing Henry Ramsay in Neighbours, Grant Mitchell in Home and Away, the BBC spy drama Bugs and the Dr Blake mysteries. Craig is also well known for roles in musical theatre such as Grease and the Rocky Horror Picture Show. So thanks so much, Craig, for taking the time to talk to me today.
Listen, thank you. A, for having me. B, for such a wonderful introduction. I should employ you as my publicist.
Oh, you're gas. Well, first of all, of course, we're going to have to go back and talk about Neighbours.
We'd be mad not to, Rita.
We'd be mad not to. Well, Henry Ramsay was the character that shot you to fame. So could you talk a bit about how that role came about for you?
Yes, I'd love to. Well, I'll put it to you this way. I can give you one of two different versions. I can give you the sort of standard what a network publicist, the story they might deliver.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what really happened. So which would you like?
Oh, what really happened, of course.
I was hoping you'd say that. So the truth of the matter is, if you can believe it, in 1986 in Australia, and I know all of my friends and certainly the fans of Neighbours in Ireland will know this. But when Neighbours launched in Australia, for whatever reason, just didn't work. It died a death and it was cancelled almost before it began. And then another network, a rival television network, a rival broadcaster, took it on, made some casting changes, recast some of the characters, and rebooted it, if you will. And of course, it worked. And ultimately, as we all know, certainly that sort of late 80s period of Neighbours, I mean, by God, it was it was phenomenal. It was like Taylor Swift mania.
Yeah.
Anyway, it seemed the only person in the country, the only person in Australia who didn't know what Neighbours was me. Because I was working in a number of just club and pub bands. So, like working men's clubs back home, back in the UK. Pubs. I was working a number of different pub bands, club bands. I had a bar job. Well, I wasn't even a barman. I was a busboy. I was responsible for keeping the joint clean, keeping ice in the fridge, and keeping the beverages stocked behind the bar. But on the side, Rita, because I wasn't a bad-looking young bloke, I suppose. I was doing a bit of TV commercial work, because they needed a young, curly-headed blonde kid with halfway decent biceps. I got stuck in front of a Wrangler Bean commercial or, a KFC commercial or whatever. One day, my agent, a wonderful, wonderful woman back in the day by the name of Leela King, she rang up and she said, I've got exciting news for you. A big audition's come in, a big audition. And I'm thinking, big audition, great, might be Burger King or Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola was a big one to get back in the day. And she said, and I should pause and say, I'd done a small role, a tiny, tiny guest role on an Australian drama series. It was only for a few episodes. It was produced by the producers who produced Neighbours back in the day. So she says, I've got this big audition for you. You know that little role you did the other day? I go, oh, yeah. She said, well, the director really, really liked you and he's recommended you for this other job. Oh, terrific, fantastic. I'm thinking it's going to be maybe one day on another soap, And she goes, it's for a new lead role, a new main character on Neighbours. And I went, okay, and what's that? And she laughed. That sense of humour. That's why people love you. You're funny. And I said, no, really, what is that? And she went, okay. It was funny the first time. You don't have to labour. I said, Leela, no, I don't know what it is. So she says, well, this is a soap. It's got, the two young, good-looking kids in it. And she was referring to Ms. Minogue and Mr. Donovan, of course. No, I still had no idea. And she said, look, trust me on this. This show is growing in popularity every day. And it'll be a great education and a great start for you, And you got the job. So anyway, I said, well, fine. I said, I've got to go. I've got a double, we used to call it the hell shift at this particular bar I worked at, which basically from 9 p.m. at night till 7 the next morning. I was horrendous, Rita.
Not fun hours.
I worked with some great characters and had some funny times, but it was, dare I say it, friends, forgive my language, it was a shitty job. But anyway, not as shitty as when I was a plumber, but that's another story for another day. So I had this double shift. The next day I get up, I go to the audition, and the waiting room is full of famous faces that I've seen on television for years. What I didn't really realise was that 2 very, very popular characters were leaving, and this new character, Henry Mitchell, as he was originally known, was filling the gap of 2 very, very popular characters played by 2 very popular actors. So, of course, the room was just full of established popular actors.
My God.
And I was like, holy guacamole, Batman, I haven't got a nice chance in hell of getting this.
Yeah.
So I sat there. Now, I didn't know whether to just try and be like collegiate, like, yeah, I'm one of you guys. I wasn't really. I was a rock guitarist who did the occasional KFC ad. And I didn't know whether to just kind of be cool and act like an actor or go up and ask them for their autographs. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So eventually I get called in, and there are 2 producers there. I won't name them to save them any embarrassment, and they ended up becoming quite good friends. But they were 2 gay men who I ascertained very quickly that they had good senses of humour, let's just say. They were up for a laugh. And so, call me what you will. God knows I've been called some horrendous things in recent years, but I just flirted and laughed and joked, and because I had no camera technique. I could memorise stuff. I could memorise material brilliantly because I'd memorised songs from the time I was very young as a guitar player. So I could do the scene, but I had no idea of camera technique, lighting, or whatever. And in the end, they just said, tell us a funny story. Well, I told them a very funny story, and they squealed with laughter. And I walked out and I said, well, you know what, if nothing else, I had a funny time with those 2 fellas, and they may call me in for something. They seem to like me. I mean, they seem to like me. But, I mean, they seem to like me. And, but I didn't think I got the job. Yeah. I thought I'd made an impression, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And we got on terrifically well. But, well, bugger me. I got home from the audition, got back to the little flat I was living in. And this is back in the days of old-fashioned answering machines. Beep, beep. You have 1 new minute. What did you do? Call me. And I'm like, it was my agent. I'm like, oh, shit, I thought that went really well. What have I done? I called her back and I said, listen, before you say anything, I just kind of joked around with those guys and we seemed to get on really well. She said, well, you must have gotten on very well because guess what? Welcome to Neighbours, Henry Mitchell. And I was like, well, I can tell you that I had to play a gig that night. I can't remember the singer who was the main performing artist that night, and we were his backing band. Tie a yellow ribbon.
Oh, yes.
Oh, it's been anyway. So after the gig, I told the fellas in the band, I said, listen, I'm going to have to quit the band. And they're like, why? What have we done? I said, you haven't done anything. I love you guys. I said, but can you believe it? I've just got a job on a thing called Neighbours. Well, of course, they all knew what it was.
Yeah.
And then, what? What do you mean? Like, as an assistant to the carpenter? Or are you going to be in the microphone? Like, what are you doing? I said, no, I'm in it.
One of the main cast.
Yeah. And they couldn't believe it. And that was really how it came about.
Wow. I think they would have really seen the character of Henry Ramsey in you because you're quite kind of jokey, prankster, same kind of sense of humour.
They must have because I certainly didn't have. Look, if they were looking for a guitar player, I'm the guy.
Yeah.
I had years of experience. I started playing in bands. Well, way too young really to be playing in licensed venues. All the musicians I worked with in those clubs, I started playing in those bands when I was 14. And they were all much older than me. And they used to dress me up in these sort of sports coats. I was a really skinny kid with a big mop of like Peter Frampton hair for our friends listening, you guys who know Peter Frampton, the big long curly hair. which they obviously mulletised once I moved to Ramsay Street. But I was skinny, really skinny. My nickname at school for a period was Dunny Brush, which is toilet
No
brush.
way. Oh, my God.
Yeah, because my body was a stick and I had this big mop of hair and my shadow just looked like a toilet brush. G'day, Dunny Brush. How goes it, mate? Yeah, good. You look a bit flushed. Yeah, very funny. So they used to dress me up in these sports coats, or get me to pinch one of my dear late father's suit jackets because they had padded shoulders and stuff. They used to try and just fill me out to make me look
bigger.
older. And I'd stand back from the front edge of any stage we worked on, so I was kind of in the shadows. People would be like, gee, the guitarist looks like a baby. But yeah, look, Rita, whatever it was in my personality, just goofing around and having a laugh with those dear fellas that day, unbeknownst to me, their vision of who Henry would be, they obviously saw that in me because it wasn't about my technical ability.
Well, you couldn't imagine anybody else playing the role. You were fantastic.
Oh, God bless you. Look, it was the best. I've often said this years ago. I used to get opportunities to chat to drama students at various schools, some back in the UK and certainly some here in Australia. And, I didn't do any formal training as an actor. All of my performance, whatever, clearly I was born with a kind of confidence. There are no performers in my family, no musicians in the family. McLachlan, it's Scottish and Irish lineage. Bricks and Mortarson, my grandfather, and my family were all in property, real estate,
Yeah.
There's a performer in my family, my uncle, even my dear late dad. I mean, they were pretty entertaining auctioneers, but that's the extent of it. I had a confidence as a kid. Even that day with those two guys, I just thought, well, I'm here, and and they want to hear a story. Well, boys, have I got a story for you? And off we went.
Yeah.
I don't know where the confidence came from, and I think over the years, some people in the world of show business, it's a pretty awful place, really. I mean, there's a lot of jealousy, and there's a lot of, and people used to see my confidence as. I actually had one actor come up to me one day and said, "You need to ease off the Charlie." And I went, "The what?" They said, "You just need to ease off the Charlie." I had no idea what they were talking about. I didn't know what Charlie was. Well, I knew Charlie Watson, who was a front of house sound engineer at the Gundaroo Hotel up at Pigeon Boy. I knew Charlie pretty good. He had good ears on him. He had a tendency to have too many beers during a gig, so you're guaranteed that he would probably blow up a speaker or two by the end of the night. But I had no idea. My energy, my enthusiasm, for life and being a people person, this fellow thought I was some sort of cocaine addict who needed to check himself into the old clinic. I'm like, mate, I don't even... To this day, I think I am probably the only person I know for show business on both sides of the equator who's never done cocaine. But anyway, wherever my inherent sort of confidence came from, and to be honest with you, Rita, and I've said this recently in a couple of interviews, and as you can imagine, I'm very wary of who I speak to these days, but even starting out playing in bands as a kid, it was always about people. Whether or not I ever became famous or not, that was way down the list on priorities. What I loved as a kid, I can remember, how's this, playing my first gig, like proper public gig. I played rhythm guitar for an established local dance band, and you'll appreciate this. All of my friends listening in Ireland, if you can remember times where you had a dance band that would come to your hall, your local hall, and play all that great old stuff and you'd dance to it. There was a local dance band here. The guitarist had broken his wrist or something, and one of the guys in the band was a school teacher at my local primary school and said, "There's a kid in school who'll be able to play all of our songs.
Wow.
So we get in." And they're thinking, oh, yeah, young teenage kid. oh, that won't do us any harm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's not quite teenage, but he's good. So around about 11, I was going, it was before my 12th birthday, I know that. I'm playing with this dance band with all these grown-ups, and I can remember taking a tiny little simple guitar solo, and a group of ladies from the CWA, the Country Women's Association, all came in front of the stage, and they gave me a little clap and blew me a kiss. It's the greatest thing that ever happened in my life.
Oh, wow.
In that moment, connecting with an audience, and I thought, that's what it's all about for me. And that's what it was to this day. You know, in recent years, of course, with the Dr. Blake mysteries, Dr. Blake continues to sell around the world, which I'm so thankful for and very proud of the show. And for people to come up, there's a wonderful girl out of the US, and I've gotten to know her. Let's just call her Coco for the purposes of this interview. And she's an ex-US Marine. She's a great gal. And she reached out to us to tell us how much my portrayal of Lucien Blake touched and moved her in terms of, for those who know the Dr. Blake mysteries, and if you don't, check it out. You'll love it. Dr. Blake, who was an ex-serviceman himself, who had issues with alcohol and, well, we know it as PTSD now, don't we?
Yeah.
And she reached out to us from the other side of the world to say what she saw in Dr. Blake and how I portrayed, if you will, his PTSD so resonated with her. To get that sort of response, well, it's overwhelming, but that's what it's always been for me. It's always been about the people, the sort of fame that comes along with it.
Yeah.
I've often said, Rita, journalists used to joke with me in the day about we never get a photo of you we never see, especially with the internet now, we can't find any photos of you on a red carpet, like a red carpet event. Yeah, unless it's a show of my own that I've got to appear at. They said, we never see you at these, you know, the opening of a new movie or the opening of this. Let's face it, most actors will go to the opening of a can of baked beans.
So true.
You know what I mean? If they think it's going to get them in the paper. That was never me. I love to be in the moment and commune with an audience, whether it's a television audience, a film audience, or a theatre audience, or a gig audience. I love to share that with them. I love to see them after the gig. I love to communicate with them, you know, writing to it, whatever. But the fame thing, it never really floated my boat. And so these journalists would say, we can never find these photos. And I'd say, well, honestly, you know what's worse than a room full of actors? And they go, what? I go, nothing.
But, you know, aren't you safer not to get too involved in that lifestyle because just so much rumours in the media, stuff made up about you. I'd say you just enjoy your performing and then have your quiet life at the side. And, of course, you've a fantastic partner, Vanessa. I watch your videos on Facebook and you are just so uplifting. You know, you'd put you in a good mood watching your videos. They're very, very uplifting.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you get a kick out of it. It's amazing. I'm new to the social media thing, really. I mean, do you know it must have been after the first season of Dr. Blake had hit the bullseye here in Australia. It was, I mean, for 6 years it was the highest rating domestic drama in the country.
Wow.
But after the first season had premiered and everyone went, looks like we might have a hit on our hands. I can't remember if it was the producers or the network. Anyway, I was asked can you start, you know, a Twitter account and engaging with people and stuff. I didn't even know what Twitter was. All I knew was that, what's his name? The fella who was, after Bruce Willis, I think Demi Moore was married to.
Oh, Ashton Kutcher.
Thank you. Yes, see, I'm not up to speed, I am. But he was really one of the first celebrities, wasn't he, to really create a big presence on Twitter.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, what do I do here, though? And I've always been very private, so I'm like, well, I'm not going to give away all my private stuff. I'm not going to, well, you know, tweet. Yeah. Here's me, folks. I'm just sitting on the toilet waiting for the kettle to boil. I mean,
I know.
You know, that's
people can overshare.
Indeed, right? So I think one of my first, and I haven't engaged on Twitter for years now for obvious reasons. But I think one of the first things I put up, just because it was something that really occurred to me in a major way this particular day, was I went into a bakery and the person that served me smiled. Nothing unusual about that. You would hope that someone working in a bakery would smile. And the teeth, it was like what I imagine the flash would have been in the middle of the number 3 reactor at Fukushima when they had the milk down there after the disastrous tsunami. I've never seen choppers so white in my life. I went, gee, they've looked after their choppers. Healthy. That's a healthy set of teeth. And then later that day I went somewhere else and I bumped into someone I hadn't seen for years and they smiled. They made Donny Osmond look like Shrek, and it suddenly occurred to me that I'm one of the few people left on the planet who has his own choppers.
Oh my God, that is so true.
And I just tweeted a question. Does anyone have their own teeth anymore? Or is it just me? I feel like a wobbegong. And a wobbegong is a shark down here in Australia that doesn't have the big, great white choppers.
Yeah.
It has these sort of gummy, needly things that... Anyway, the response from this was, well, you can imagine it ranged from, what the F are you talking about? And, well, I've got my own choppers. And there was this mini explosion of... And I'm like, really? Is this what this thing is, Twitter? And are there that many people just waiting to comment on the baker's neon uppers? Anyway, so all of this social media stuff that Nessie and I are doing together and stuff I'm doing on my own, again, I said to Ness, I said, well, it's just got to be me. It's just got to be fun. Yeah. And after everything we've been through, I'm certainly not going to pretend and put up stuff that isn't. So the fact that I really appreciate, Rita, you commenting on it, and I actually played guitar for a country artist here in Australia the other night, and enough people who came up. And because I kind of do it and think, well, send it off out there and whatever happens, happens. Kind of, again, because I'm not one of these youngsters who kind of live on devices. I still haven't quite done the math of how many people watch this stuff and how much it means to them.
Yeah.
So I'm playing guitar for this country guy the other day, wonderful fella, friends, Andy Penkow, Penkow. Check him out. He's just a wonderful, wonderful singer. Even if country's not your thing, you'll get something out of his voice, I promise you. Anyway, there's my plug for Andy. A number of people, Rita, who came up and said, oh, my God, I saw that thing you and your lovely partner Vanessa did where she got you Dr. Blake and you just didn't have the energy to argue with her. Or we saw the dance you two did.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. We saw the thing you did with the umbrella. Well, isn't it wonderful that some of our silliness can put a smile on someone's dial?
But that's it. When you're getting that reaction, it makes it feel so worthwhile putting the videos up when it brightens someone's day.
It's like, listen, your podcast, and Nessie and I have had a little look at all the people you've interviewed. But, isn't it wonderful to know that this thing that you're investing your energy and passion into, people all over the world, and here we are, opposite sides of the planet.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Once upon a time, you'd have to go to a studio to do this interview. Now you can do it from anywhere. It's wonderful, so it is.
Absolutely.
Another thing, just going back to Neighbours again, because I just wanted to mention this, was I know you had a scene with another big Oscar-winning performer, Russell Crowe. He handed you your ass on screen, didn't he?
He did. What a brute. He was destined to play the gladiator, wasn't he? I mean, all of those things we read in newspapers about, Russ getting into a fight and all the rest of it. Wow. And the writing was on the wall. Look what he did to Henry. What though? Henry picked himself up and was ready to keep going until it was broken up. Isn't it funny, if I think back to my time with the show, I mean, I know Neighbours ran for years and years and years and years. Some people would argue that perhaps it went a little longer than it should have. Some people are rejoicing the fact that They've brought it back. Some are suggesting that maybe they shouldn't have. Everyone's got an opinion on it. But the one thing that I can say with absolute certainty, because I was there, that, how do I best describe it? That golden period of the show with, you know, Scott and Charlene, obviously we know the wedding was like...
Oh, iconic.
One of the highest-rating events in the history of television in the 20th century. That golden period from the late 80s really into perhaps the very early 90s. People of a certain age who sort of maybe discovered Ramsay Street late in its time. For those of us who were there for that classic 80s period, it was otherworldly. I mean, I joked earlier about it being like Taylor Swift mania, but
it really
certainly
was.
You guys in England, Scotland, Ireland, you guys know when the BBC had to put that sucker on twice a day.
Yeah.
And I can remember getting a fax, because this is, yes, kids, there was a world before. I remember getting a fax from a publicist at the BBC who, I think they sent a fax to the main cast just saying, you know, congratulations, the show's falling like 20 million. I mean, we had more viewers in the United Kingdom than we had people in Australia at that point. It was bigger than the Australian population. And then I remember a couple of the cast went across to the UK and came back and they, Craig, it's true. Because, you know, and me being, I'm like, you know, the show's bigger than big, it's 20 million. And I go, well, publicists are going to say that because, you know, that's what publicists do. And then my friends came back and said, no, it's all true. It's like Beatlemania. It's like Culture Club mania. It's like whatever. And still I'm thinking, well, it can't be that. It can't be that insane. And then I made my first promotional trip across. Rita, as you know, it was all true.
Yeah.
It was just mental.
And then, of course, 1990, you release Mona, which was a massive hit. Number 2, I think you got to in UK charts.
Isn't that funny? I should have a ukulele.
Just line about.
So do you read what I want to do? I want to come and sit in your kitchen with you. Oh, when you come out on the front. We had no idea. The song had been big in Australia. But again, remember, Australia, we only had a population of half a dozen people compared to the UK. So when you get word from the record company in the UK that, hey, the song's out and it's climbing up the top 100, a couple of days later they go, it's top 30. Oh, well, that's following week they ring up and said, we may have to fly you over. Oh, okay.
Wow.
Because now the song's top 20 and it's just selling. By the time we got over, say we, me and the band, got over for our first promotional tour, and that's just doing the chat shows and radio shows and stuff. Because bear in mind too, timeline, I had signed a deal to do a stint for however many months, probably a year, I guess, on Home and Away, the big Neighbours rival back in the day. So the network had let me out of my contract to go over and do some promo with the band. And suddenly it's number 10, that's number 7, it's number 5, 4, 3, 2. So, yeah, suddenly we're at number 2 and we're being held out of the number 1 spot by Elton John, Sir Elton, with his first UK number 1 single. Of course, he had a massive number 1 single with his reworking of Candle in the Wind.
Oh, that was fantastic.
For the passing of Princess Diana. But at that point, it's no sacrifice.
Oh,
that was his big hit. And,
I love
it
that
was
song.
keeping, I know, me too. And it was keeping us out of the number 1 spot. Well, I remember saying to the boys in the band, because they're all going, you know, and the next week he's still at number 1. The next week he's still at... And I'm like, guys, you got to keep this. You got to keep this shit in perspective. It's Elton John, you know, Yellow Brick Road, and on, all those guys. What an honour to be held out of number 1. Anyway, we went back to Australia and we came back a couple of weeks later and Mona's still at number 2, Elton John's still at number 1. But we were tipped off that the Mona sales had increased, Elton's sales had decreased a little, and it looked like we were going to finally, after weeks and weeks and weeks, and of course Sacrifice, he had released the single before we released Mona. So all things being fair and equal in rock and roll, it looked like we were going to, well, the record company were already popping the champagne. The thing happened, a movie was released called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and they had a song in that movie called Spin That Wheel, I think, and it just slaughtered us in the sales department. This thing just hit the ground running, and so we stayed at number 2, and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles went, now listen, to be held out of the number 1 spot by the legendary...
Yeah, exactly.
I can cope. Being kept at the number 1 spot by latex, purple shell wearing, amphibious bloody superhero turtles. That was a tough one to swallow, but anyway.
Oh, when you think back, they were massive, the Turtles.
Massive!
Yeah, big style. Another thing I always remember is watching you and Debbie Gibson on the Royal Variety performance doing a few of the songs from Greece.
What a night that was. Seriously, we had the best time. It was so exciting. Debbie and I are still very, very, very close to this day. And for you guys who enjoy your social media and checking out what people are doing, do pop over and have a look at Debbie's official socials. She's a fun gal too. But Rita, that night, and growing up in Australia, we're part of the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
The Queen, my entire lifetime, from our coins, our currency, photos in the town hall, in the Scout Hall, the Cup Hall. Well, Queen Elizabeth, isn't it? When I rang Mum and said to her, Mum, are you sitting down? You better brace yourself. I'm singing for the Queen. Well, it wouldn't matter what I did prior to that or what I did with my career after that.
That was it. You'd made it in her eyes.
And God bless her, she said, Mr. McLachlan, I thoroughly enjoyed the numbers from your show this evening. Thank you so much for being part of the concert tonight. The pleasure was absolutely mine, Your Majesty, and shook hands and stuff. A girlfriend of mine from the show was poking me in the bum and, and I turned and I said, you can't be poking me and pinching me and tickling me when I'm talking to the Queen. But my mum's waited a lifetime for this moment. What am I going to say to her? Oh, my friend tickled me the whole time. I could barely speak. And then from behind me, I hear... I turned around, it was Prince Philip, because someone told me that he'll be a few paces behind talking to people, whatever.
Yeah.
He's watched this whole thing with me saying to this girl, can you stop tickling the bum and pinching me and all? And he looked at me and he just went, good times, eh?
I love it.
Fantastic. He was a hoot.
You have some amazing memories. It was such a fantastic time. It was the whole kind of, as well, Stock Aitken and Waterman period.
I mean, I know kids have rediscovered, never going to give you up.
Oh, yeah.
Never going to run around. Vic Astley, God bless him. And so people have kind of, youngsters through TikTok and what have you, have rediscovered some of the Stock Aitken Waterman hits from back in the day. But again, it's like that late 80s period of Ramsay Street.
Yeah.
For those of you who weren't there, when you and I talk about the Stock Aitken Waterman phenomenon and the hit factory that it was, not just Kylie and the Donovan and Astley.
Sonia.
Sonia.
Yeah.
Sonia, who came in and replaced Debbie in Greece, remember? So I had Sonia was my Sandy for 3 or 4 months after Debbie returned to the States. All right, Craig. All right.
Oh, she's such a strong accent.
How are you, Sonia? I'm all right. How are you, Craig? I loved her. She was just great. She was such good value, Sonia.
When I interviewed Jason Donovan, he said to me, you never know the value of a moment until it becomes a memory. And I think that whole period now, for all you guys, I'd say it's more special now looking back than when you were living it. It was like a whirlwind living it. Now looking back, I'd say it's very special to you.
Oh, look, it really is. And I think perhaps for me, my perspective on it was possibly a little different to, say, Jason's or Kylie's, in that, Jason came from a showbiz family. His dad, Terry, had been a very, very successful television actor in Australia. And I know ended up on Neighbours himself, I think.
Yeah, I think he did.
Yeah. I should know that, but I'm pretty sure he did. Jason's mum had been a successful anchor woman or news anchor, I think, on television. Jason himself appeared on television as a little kid. Eileen's family, Danny Minogue, of course, had been part of this thing called the Young Talent Time, which was a musical sort of variety show in Australia featuring talented young kids, singing and dancing. Interestingly enough, how I got to know the Minogue family, even though Kylie Minogue and I were brother and sister in Ramsay Street, it was her sister Danny I got to know. For some of my contemporaries who had sort of grown up in a show-busy sort of world, maybe they were more placed to kind of glide through those moments at the time with, I don't want to say they took it casually because it was a pretty big deal for all of us. But for me, I can remember in the moment, I can remember thinking, wow, I'd never experienced anything like it. And I think one of the reasons I wasn't interested in drugs or drink or any of the usual vices that go with fame, perhaps, or certainly did once upon a time, because I didn't want to miss a thing, Rita. I didn't want to, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't want to miss a second of it. I wanted to be clean and straight and fit.
And be present.
And present and enjoy every second of it. And, I know Jace had his issues with substances or whatever, and a lot of my contemporaries did, and for all sorts of reasons. And it's available, and you're
young and you're Persian and
you're young and you're whatever.
Yeah.
I had a friend who I won't mention because but he really, really lost himself in a haze of drugs and booze. And I can remember thinking, for so long, he was someone I really aspired to be like. He was very talented, charming. He was having a terrific career in his country, and it was sort of spreading around the world, around the Northern Hemisphere anyway. And I just saw him. I mean, it was like he'd been given the keys to the kingdom, and then I just saw him chuck them away. And I remember being young. Remember, we were all kids. I was only 20. I just turned 21, I think, when I moved into Ramsay Street. When I started working with the guys. But even at that age, I was like, I don't want to miss a thing. And then as fame, or if you want to call it celebrity, when all of that stuff impacted on me, I met people I'd always sort of idolised along the way, and then I would see disaster befall them because of substances or what it was. I can remember thinking, let that be a lesson, don't succumb to that sort of stuff. And thankfully, touch wood.
You were very wise not to go down that road.
And honestly, Rita, the things I can recall over that 30-plus year period, I mean, Vanessa's amazed at, I'll recall little things. I'll recall meeting someone on tour down in Southampton who I end up going and having a cup of tea with them at their house and all of this stuff. And just wonderful. It's funny, isn't it? All the things I really delight in remembering are those human moments. Like Brenda, my dresser at the Mayflower Theatre in Southampton, and her husband Ray, who occasionally worked stage door, who I used to refer to as Auntie Brenda and Uncle Ray, and I'd go over to their place on a Monday and have, brunch or lunch with them. It was the people, the wonderful friendship I struck up with, Alvin Stardust of all people. I have wonderful, wonderful memories of, winning the awards in Australia, television awards and all that stuff. And, that's all very exciting, and it certainly sort of ticks the the dream boxes as a little boy, thinking, one day I'd love to win, or I'd love to. I remember as a little boy thinking I loved Elvis Presley when I was a kid learning guitar. As an 8-year-old, I'd be walking around the house, Mum, my voice was broken, so it was more like sense no, baby. And I dreamed of, I'd say to my brother, who was 8.5, 9 years older than me, so one day I'm going to have a gold record just like Elvis. And eventually I did.
Yeah.
And all of that stuff's wonderful. But for me, Rita, meeting you tonight, I just know if Vanessa and I find ourselves travelling to, I'm guessing you're still in Ireland?
Yes.
Are you,
West Coast.
Yeah. West Coast? Well, I just know that, I could get online and say, Rita, you're not going to believe it, Ness and I are flying in this weekend. Are you going to be around? This is the stuff that, for me, the people.
Yeah. Now, we've talked a lot about the past, so we'll do a little bit of your future now. So I believe you have some projects that you'd like to share?
Well, yes, I do have some projects. There's something coming out shortly through all my socials. My social media manager is not going to let me give the name away just yet, but I can tell you this. It's an uplifting project, an uplifting sort of program, if you will. And look, it's no secret to most of my friends around the world that Nessie and I and the family have been through 6 years of at the hands of someone we thought was a friend. It's been a very, very difficult time. But through that time, I have, again, I have come into contact with some amazing people who have taught me and Nessa, taught us some fantastic skills, ways to cope with stress, pressure. Now, I know there's a lot of stuff out there available. There are all sorts of things you can read, sorts of things, podcasts you can listen to, and the rest of it. But the lessons I've learned over these last difficult 6 years and the way I went about implementing certain lessons, I'm sharing with people and doing it with a smile on the dial. We'll have a giggle along the way. I was telling a friend of mine recently that I was wanting to give something back, because what's interesting is if you go through an unimaginable, you may be getting this time that we're spending together, albeit via technology on opposite sides of the planet. You can probably tell that I don't really have a bullying personality. So, and all these wonderful things we're talking about, the career I've had and what have you, someone said to me once, because bear in mind, I'd never not worked up until this awful event in my life. And I'd be the first one to say, I never believed it was because I was the greatest gift to acting. What light from yonder window breaks? That's not,
Yeah.
I knew him well, Horatio. What I think it was, and all of the letters from producers and directors in my filing cabinet in my office would suggest that I was just a good guy to have around. I mean, I think I delivered a halfway decent performance in whatever I did as well. But my ego was never such that I thought, I was God's gift to the world of entertainment. Again, a people person. And I think I took a happy energy onto the film set. I think some jealous and vindictive individuals didn't like the career I was having, and I paid the ultimate price for that. But getting back to good people, teaching me how to survive the tough times, I just want to give back. I want to give what I've learned.
You're turning something negative into something positive.
That's it.
Yeah.
And, after my acquittal, being found not guilty of any wrongdoing, which was barely reported in Australia, of course, because it didn't suit big media's narrative. They thought they'd found their Aussie Harvey Weinstein. No, turns out the guy's innocent. Well, we'll put that on page 97 in a tiny bit.
It's not juicy enough.
It's not juicy, is it? No, turns out Craig is the good guy we thought he was. Damn it. And what I think upset us so much is, for a great part of my career, Rita, I always made myself available to particularly teenagers reaching out, talking about how they'd be bullied at school or whatever. I'd speak to students about being bullied at school. I laugh about it now, but, being a skinny kid with a big mop of curly hair growing up in Australia, I was bullied as the dummy brush. In fact, it was probably only the fact that, I could play any AC/DC song the tough kids wanted to hear. Me really copping it. But, to be branded a bully and a monster, that's one thing. But the fact that there are legitimate cases, too many legitimate cases of people copping a really hard time in the workplace or in school or in the home, who see the media circus surrounding sensationalised allegations. And, of course, now they're reluctant to speak up because they don't want to be part of some sort of media circus. And that really concerns us. But getting back to our special project that's coming, hopefully we will, in a very positive and fun way, provide, and this is sort of stage one of a number of things we hope to do. This will be a very digestible introduction to little things you can do to just help face the day in a better way. If you're experiencing, you don't have to be demolished by big media and so-called friends to find yourself struggling each day. There are a lot of people out there doing it tough for all sorts of reasons. But again, getting back to me just being about the people, if I can offer up something that will help you get out of bed in the morning, that's a good thing. It's going to make me feel good if it's helping make you feel good. So that's where we're kind of at with that. All of our Rita fans out there, you're just going to have to check out my social media stuff, and we're counting down.
Yeah.
You'll be well aware of the right. Nessie and I have been producing a little television project.
Excellent.
We're in the editing stage at the moment. Do you want me to tell you what it's called?
Go on.
Well, I can tell you. I don't have to kill you. No, I can't tell you. Because my co-producer will string me up. But it's a lot of fun. It'll put a smile on your dial, I promise. And I've just started collaborating musically with the wonderful Andy Penko, who I mentioned earlier, the country artist. So we'll be recording some stuff soon. He's just off to Canada to do a tour, and then he comes back and we'll go into the studio. So there'll be music coming your way.
Oh, excellent.
With a wonderful, wonderful singer and a pretty flash guitar player.
Well, you send me all the links and I'll get all them shared on my page as well.
Oh, God bless you. We'll do that for sure. And there's, I've been asked to, it's interesting, Australia's a funny old place. We used to call it the land of the fair go. Sadly, it isn't. Not as far as show business is concerned. I'm not sure what an acquittal means to Australian showbiz. It clearly doesn't mean anything. But there's a wonderful, courageous producer and his writer, very talented young gal, who have invited me to go and film something for them next month down in Melbourne, a new drama series. Very exciting. Again, I can tell you what it's called.
But you'd have to kill me.
But Vanessa and I will get, or Kate will get all the info to you so you and our friends can check it out.
Excellent.
So slowly but surely, after all of the pain, the unimaginable pain of the last 6 years for me and Vanessa and our families, things are slowly turning a corner. And this is an example of it right now. Chatting to you is a lovely thing for me. I hope it's been a lovely.
Oh, well, I've really enjoyed it. I have to say the 8-year-old little girl inside me was very excited for this interview. But listen, Craig, I've held you for long enough. I've enjoyed our chat so much. And thank you so much again for your time today.
It's so my pleasure. Thank you for inviting an old heartthrob along to chat with you.